right, everyone. So in this video, what I want to do is go over our cell membrane transport notes. You can find these notes on Canvas on our modules all the way down under Unit 2. It's called Membrane Transport Notes. This might pop up, but just click on that white text up there and it'll take you to the PowerPoint. Last week, we talked about the cell membrane being one of the organelles in the cell. Remember that all cells have cell membranes. That's that outer boundary. And all the cell membranes are made up of proteins, lipids, and carbs. The cell membrane is one of the most important organelles in the cell. It helps separate the external environment, the outside, from the inside of the cell. It also is the gatekeeper, kind of controls what comes in and what goes out. That's why it's called selectively permeable. And it also helps maintain homeostasis, or this internal balance within the cell. Briefly in your game, you learned a little bit about how molecules are transported in and out of the cell. We have two main types of transport, passive and active. The first one we'll talk about is passive transport. Passive transport does not require energy to move molecules from an area of high concentration to low concentration. We'll kind of see what that looks like here shortly. There are two types of passive transport. There's diffusion and osmosis. Diffusion is the movement of small particles across that membrane until equilibrium is reached. And that just means when there's an equal amount of molecules on both sides. And of course, it's important to know it's going from an area of high concentration to low concentration. Okay, so here's a visual. So you see all those molecules in the corner, very concentrated. They don't want to stay there. They want to move until they are fully spread out. And that's how diffusion works. It's very natural. Molecules naturally don't want to be clumped up, just like humans. Think of the last time you were on a crowded bus or in a crowded room. You probably wanted to get the heck out of there and get some space from people, especially with COVID being a thing. Molecules work the exact same way, and it's natural, so that's why there's no energy required here. Osmosis is diffusion also, but it's specifically the diffusion of water through the cell membrane. Water also diffuses from an area of high concentration to low concentration. Okay, here is a good visual as well. You'll see that there is an equal level of water. But as you see on one side of this membrane, we have all water, these blue particles, and on the other we have some of those green molecules that are sugar. So even though they look like they have the same amount of water, there is no sugar on this side, so there's a higher concentration of just water. And over here, since sugar is taking up some space, there's a low concentration of water on that side. Therefore, water is going to go from this area to this area. And here's another good visual. We want equilibrium. We want the same amount of molecules on both sides, just so they all have their own space. So we start with a whole bunch, an area of high concentration, and it naturally just wants to move away until we finally get equilibrium. Here's another visual of osmosis. Again, the water level looks equal, but if we look at what's making up that water on the left side, we see that there is a lot more water than this solute, which could be, let's say, sugar again. And on the right side, there is a lot more sugar and a lot less water. So high concentration of water on the left, low concentration on the right. So water is going to move this way to the right across the membrane. When we talk about osmosis, we talk about these three types of solutions: hypertonic, hypotonic, and isotonic. And this is just like if you had a glass of water with some other solutes, sugar or salt dissolved in it. How are our cells going to react to that? So a hypertonic solution contains a high concentration of that solute, whether it's sugar or salt. Okay, hyper, think if you're hyper, you have a lot of energy, high concentration of solute. Okay, so when that happens, there's a lot more water within the cell and not so much water outside the cell. So water is going to move out. When water moves out, kind of like if you have a balloon and you let it go, the air is going to go out, it's going to shrink back down. Hypotonic solutions are the opposite. Hypotonic solutions have a low concentration of solute, so those sugars and salt, then in the cell. So the cell is going to have less water. The water is going to rush into the cell to make up for that. That's going to cause the cell to swell and then potentially explode if too much water gets in there. Okay, very similar to that balloon analogy, but instead we're starting from a regular non-blown up balloon. We're putting air in it. It's going to blow up real big. If we keep putting more air, eventually it'll explode. Same thing goes for that. Okay, a good way to remember this is hypotonic solution or HIPPO. HIPPOs are big, cells get big, right? Isotonic solutions are last. These have the same concentration of solutes in the solution as the cell. So the cell will stay the same, but water will just kind of go in and out of the cell in a very fluid motion. Water doesn't ever stop moving, but it's definitely not going to rush in or out like the other solutions. All right, here are some pictures. Hypotonic solution, remember there's low solute. See, there's only one, let's say, sugar molecule. So high concentration of water here, low concentration of water here. The water is going to rush in, hypo, so big, so it's going to get really big. Hypertonic is the opposite. There are so many solutes in here, all those sugar molecules. Hyper, high energy, high amount of solute compared to the cell. So here's a low concentration of water here, high concentration of water here. So the water's going to rush out, shrivel up that cell. Isotonic solution, you see there's pretty much the same amount on both sides. So water is just going to move freely in and out, and the cell is not going to change shape at all. And here's just another picture representation of these different solutions and how cells react in them. Active transport is the complete opposite of passive transport. These molecules will be moving from an area of low concentration to high concentration. And of course, that's going against everything that cells or molecules really want to do. So it's going to take some energy to get those molecules across that membrane. It's going to be pumped across. That's where proteins come in. They help us get those molecules over to the other side. Okay, and there's an example, the molecule going into this protein, but it's not moving over until you get that energy. Bam, move. Yeah. So ultimately, here's a great analogy. So let's say that we are having a snow day and it's sledding. If we're at the top of the hill and we sit in our sled, is it going to take a lot of energy for us to get down the hill? No, not at all, right? It just kind of naturally works that way because of the energy that we already have up here. We just kind of let go and we go down. So passive transport, going from high concentration to low, requires absolutely no energy. On the opposite side of that, active transport for sure definitely does. After we're done with our sledding and we want to go back for some more, we're at the bottom. Is it going to take some energy to get from that low area to that high area? Absolutely. And here's another great visual representation. If you have any questions about anything in this video, please let me know. Otherwise, good luck with your assignment and have a great day.